Well, hello and welcome to everybody. We're so glad you're joining us today for our Winter Alumni College series. And if you are here for the film marketing course, you are definitely in the right place. My name is Sharon Rice, and I'm the Associate Director of Alumni Engagement at the college. And I am joined by my colleague, Jordan McNichol, class of 2014, who is a major gifts officer at Wooster. I see lots of familiar names and faces, students who just graduated, people who are alumni trustees. This is great. It's a great turnout today. And we're happy to have with us Susannah Montgomery from the class of 2015. I will say that Jordan and I are technically your Zoom hosts. And so if you have any issues with Zoom, please let one of us know in the chat. We will go ahead and unmute everybody after I finish my introduction because Susannah wants to be able to talk with people, just like an actual Wooster class. We want to be able to see each other and talk to each other. You will go into breakout rooms, and maybe Susannah, you're going to explain all this.
Yeah.
We'll have that fun little exercise to do there. And then when we come back together, I think we're going to have more discussion. And please feel free to contribute. Don't be shy. I know Wooster people usually are not, so I probably didn't have to say that. And so without further ado, Susannah, I will turn it over to you, and I will do my best here to unmute everybody, or give you the option to unmute yourselves, I think is what I will really do. And let's see. Oh, dicey signal, cold weather. Okay, Mary. No, it's good. You're good, Mary. Okay. All right. Well, Susannah, I'm going to mute myself, which could be the best news of the day, and put everybody else able to unmute themselves as well. So take it away.
All right. Well, hi, everyone. I'm Susannah Montgomery. I graduated class of 2015. And like I said, I think I might win the award for being the furthest away today because I actually live in the Netherlands right now.
Oh.
Think of myself as an Ohio girl, but I currently live in a different country, which, it's been a really, really fun journey. Obviously, I went to Wooster. I went and got my master's degree in arts policy and administration. And then I followed a boy across the ocean. And that's how I started my life in the Netherlands. And I happened to get into teaching when I arrived. And so I didn't necessarily have plans to be a university lecturer, but life is funny and the twists and turns it takes. And so a lot of the courses I teach are on international creative business. So I focus a lot on the events industry and on marketing strategy classes. And my favorite one to teach is film marketing. So I had a background in more of let's say the design side, the arty side, the critical side of marketing and strategy. And I worked with one of my favorite colleagues who used to work in film marketing. We designed this course together to help students to understand how to make great marketing materials and how to, as I like to say, get butts into seats if they're going to market films. So a lot of what we'll cover today is kind of like a condensed version of my favorite lecture to give to my students, and I want to share that with you today. So first, I'm going to share my screen. Just let me know in the chat when you see it, or give me a shout out. We're not muted anymore. It'll be a good test to see who's brave. I
can see
thumbs up.
it works. It works.
Right. So we're here today to talk about semiotics and why they're the secret sauce to great promotion. So I say in the future, although the future may already be today, especially with the rise of TikTok. But basically, like almost anyone who wants to be a director of films, they can direct films depending on how you define a film. And in all seriousness, every day hundreds of new and excellent movies are being made, just typically not maybe at the large level we typically associate with a film. So film marketing is all about trying to answer the question, how do you ensure that the audience wants to see your film and will pay for it? So film marketing it's this industry that's all about getting those butts in the seats. So they're not, most people who work in marketing, they're not super interested in like the artistic message of the film. They're there to make sure the film is successfully distributed. So the first part of this lecture, I just want to give you a quick overview of what is film marketing. I'm gonna make sure I can see your chat because I can't right now. Yeah, I don't have a view of the chat. So I just want to give you a fair warning. I can't see the chat. So if you want to ask something, maybe one of the moderators can let me know if there's something in the chat or.
Yeah, we'll keep an eye on it for you, Susannah.
Great, thank you. I just wanted to let everyone know so you're not like, why is she ignoring me? Anyway, so the first part, I want to give you just a quick cap of what is film marketing. So it's a huge industry. Typically, movie studios are spending somewhere around $8 billion a year to produce films in the United States. And this investment ensures like a steady flow of film. So it doesn't necessarily guarantee an audience for these films. That's why marketing is such a critical part of the filmmaking ecosystem. So a general rule of thumb is kind of for every $2 a film studio is spending to make their film, another dollar is going into marketing it. So yeah, about $4 billion a year. It's crazy. And we've all experienced typical film promotion, right? This sort of formula of trailers in the theaters, TV advertisements, billboards, actors strategically coming onto talk shows to give a fun interview. And these can create a high level of awareness, but for it to really succeed, you need a strategy. So for film marketing, you're considering the different stakeholders at play, right? You have the person who made the film. You have the studio who wants a return on investment for all this money they put into a film. They're hoping it's going to come back with lots of profit. You have that audience who's hoping they're going to be entertained by whatever artistic creation comes out. You have brands who are going to attach their name to your film in joint promotion efforts. And there's you. If you're in film marketing, your role is distribution. So you're going to help with these films getting into theaters and into other avenues, which we'll talk about in a second, so that, again, butts are in seats, we're making a profit. Now, of course, there's many windows. I think sometimes when we think about film marketing, we often think about let's say the cinema experience, although maybe not anymore. The pandemic's maybe warped our vision of what it feels like to watch a film. So if you're a film distributor, you're thinking in part about screenings, so seeing them in the cinema, maybe pre-screenings for the press and such to get a buzz going. You maybe less so today, but you have DVD sales and Blu-ray sales to consider down the line. And the big growing kingpin in film distribution is streaming and video on demand in a lesser extent, especially in COVID times. And a part we often don't think about as much too, but we see films on TV. I know my family would always get very excited when like Lord of the Rings, for example, would pop up on TV. And that's another form of distribution where, again, we can make some money off of these films. But for the sake of today, let's think about theatrical release. As fun as it is to talk about, TV and such, I'm going to focus a lot of this today on more what leads to a good theatrical release and what are the tools you need to get there. So the first thing you're typically thinking about when you're designing your marketing materials is your USP, your unique selling point. What is it that makes your film different and better than other films? You're also trying to figure out kind of how many screens are you going after, because distribution typically happens on a national level. In the US, maybe even a little more regional, because, for example, in the Netherlands, what will happen is a distribution company will buy the rights from America, if it's an American film, to be the one who distributes it in that country. Which is really interesting. So then they sort of customize the marketing materials to match that country and their wants and needs for going to see a certain film. So it's really interesting. So the campaigns that I might see in the Netherlands aren't necessarily the same campaigns that you're seeing in America. Certainly some similarities, but not identical. You're also figuring out approximately when do you want to start promoting? Are you going to just sort of drop this all of a sudden, big surprise kind of release, sort of like what happened with the Cloverfield paradox? I don't know if you remember that. There's a big buzz like that. Yeah, I see Peter nodding that they had this like release where it was during the Super Bowl, right? And they just said, surprise, Netflix, we've got a new film, go see it right now. But most of the time you have a lot more lead up than that going into when you want to start promoting your film. And of course, by understanding who you think will see your film, you'll know what sort of promotion will be effective. So I've talked for a bit. I'm curious to hear from you all. So tell me a bit, I don't know.
What is the role of film festivals in the distribution system?
Oh, that's a great question. Film festivals, let's say they're early on in the distribution process. So they're more in this sort of screening side that typically you're trying to enter festivals before you want to do any, let's say, mainstream distribution, because you can get this early buzz and press that you can then slap onto, for example, posters that will suddenly make people much more interested in buying it in like the mainstream cinemas. So you're kind of planning your whole release schedule around which festivals are also most pertinent to your film. There's more that goes into it. There's some films that are never going to enter festivals, right? Like if you're a Marvel film, you don't need that. You don't really fit that. But if you're in more of this art house style, film festivals can make or break, let's say, how well you're going to do on a larger commercial level. Yeah, so they're hugely important, and they're typically early on in the process, because if you get that really positive attention, you can kind of pivot your whole promotion plan around that early positive critical attention that you got.
One interesting way I have encountered for film promotion is I was at a bookstore in Columbus once, and there was this young person outside with a little table set up with promotional materials for Beguiled, that Nicole Kidman film. And she gave me this cup or this glass or something, and it had, you know, the big pink font, the Beguiled or whatever it was. Like it was on there, but on the other side, it just said head B word in charge. And that was the promotional material. So you could, to promote your film, go outside a bookstore and hand out items with curse words, and that'll do it.
That was neat.
That was
I'd
great.
never seen that.
I don't think I have it anymore, sadly.
That's fascinating. And I'm curious with that example, was it sponsored by anyone? Like, was this Barnes and Noble, for example, they were in front of, or was this a local?
It was the Book Loft.
The Book Loft.
Yeah,
So an
like
independent
really tiny
bookstore.
Yeah, very, very weird. I'd never seen that before.
That's really interesting. But giveaways, that can be a tool, especially if you're sort of like thinking about where is the person you think will see your film, where are they going to be? I mean, that is thinking at a very local scale, which is interesting, but you know, it works. You remember this film. I mean, how many other people on here remember Beguiled? But again, the right promotion with the right audience can really stick in your mind. And that's what you're going for, right? Build awareness, make sure they don't forget this film. Yeah, anyone else have any ideas of what are possible ways you can promote a film? What tools could you use?
I like the approach of the non-traditional ones, like you guys just said. So living in a city, sometimes when a movie's coming out, there will be like graffiti or kind of street art that will promote it as well, which is always really fun. And then I think also gives it kind of an edge that you might not get from more traditional advertising.
Oh, yeah, that's a good point too, that they're really customizing. And that really goes with like this guerrilla marketing trend, not like Gorilla the Ape, but guerrilla warfare gorilla. But you kind of try to do pop-ups that really make people stop to think. Sometimes it's like more the flash mobby way, but like street art kind of falls into that broader category. That's a good one.
And I've lived places that are more pedestrian, and I see a lot of, well, when I was living in Slovenia, I lived in a town that was very pedestrian, very walkable.
Yeah.
And yeah, I was there a few years ago on a Fulbright, and you saw the film posters just on the street. And you don't really see that here in cities where people don't walk, because that doesn't make sense. But, you know, I saw play posters and film posters on the street to get people into the theaters.
That's such a good example too. It's again, where are they? I see that a lot where I am as well, that like bus stops are really
Right.
common place to see it because people either are waiting there or they're walking by it.
Yeah, where I
But-
live, people just walked around town because, the roads weren't great and a lot of tourists and, parking sucked. So,
So there you go. So you want to be where they are. And it's,
right.
again, this is why one size fits all doesn't always work. That, for example, a handy strategy can be putting posters in like the subway or the metro, depending on where you are. But I bet most people on here aren't anywhere near a metro. So that's not a great strategy if you're going after, I don't know, say the Columbus or the Wyoming.
Right. Yeah. No, I'd see them in, places when I travel into bigger cities, abroad, because I actually teach international marketing.
Oh, there you go. Then feel free to interject with more ideas. But it's, I'd say that with, marketing, there's a certain formula that works with most products. And in the end, your product, in this case, it's a film. And the way we, the kind of measure if it's successful is, again, for theatrical release, did they buy the ticket? And that's why film marketing is such a funny field. Because sometimes, you can think about this. Sometimes there's really bad films, right? Just terrible films, but they still need to make money off of it. So you have to come up with very clever campaigns to convince people again, why should I spend the money and put my butt in that seat? Film marketing is much more inspiring when it's a good film, but sometimes the best way to really think about how people are thinking strategically about selling films is to look at what were the promotions used for a not so good one.
Mary, did you have something that you wanted to ask or to say?
Yeah, I was just going to say, it seems like really social media is such a strong platform for advertising, and, linking your project to a bunch of related projects so that you come up in searches and feeds and things like that is likely to have a broader exposure that will work outside of your own local environment and get a more worldwide or national exposure for what you're doing. You're
absolutely right, Mary. And Mary, I have a question for you. When you say social media, what comes to mind for you? Are there, like, especially with films, where do you think people might be looking for content around films?
I think, well, I don't know, but I guess, the usual suspects come to mind. I'm an older person, so I'm still Facebooking like mad. But I see lots of advertisements if I'm interested in a group or something like that, stuff pops up. Or if I'm searching something, stuff pops up. And, all the ads that are within anywhere you go online, the ads that pop up. Somehow, I don't know how it works, but somehow to get in there would be good. I don't know.
You're absolutely right.
But you could get somebody to do some kind of fun something or other on like TikTok and other places that people kind of scroll quickly through or whatever. I don't know. But I would find somebody like you or someone else who knows how to do that. And I would say blast social media in any way you can think of that's clever, and tag us to entities that are related where the demographics are right.
You are absolutely right that I think social media has really changed the field when it comes to promotion, because it's, for any kind of promotion, it is, let's say, one of the cheaper ways of planning a campaign. Now, granted, if you're going to put the money in, you want to target strategically. And, I know a really good example of this. I don't know how many people on here have seen The Greatest Showman. That was quite a phenomena. But they had a really interesting marketing campaign because they released their trailer on YouTube, among many platforms. And you can see the whole one there. But what they really tried to do was test mini trailers, like 10-second snippets with people based off of like their data on their personalized data from YouTube and then from other platforms like Facebook and Instagram. And they would kind of try to match nuggets with which ones they thought. And it was really interesting. It led to a much higher like watch through rate, because typically like when it comes to like a little video ad, right, there's like a certain amount you're required to watch and then you have to click a button to keep going. But the point being that they, by customizing it based on your personalized data, they had a much higher rate of people saying, oh, I'm just going to keep watching. And so for some audiences, they'd really emphasize the romance story of Greatest Showman. For others, they'd really emphasize the music and the show side of it. And it's, I think that's a really interesting part of social media as a promotion tool. You can actually customize it much more than we ever could previously. Really earlier, you can customize to the point of, okay, what makes sense in this city approximately. And now it can be all the way down to the data of you as an individual, which is cool or scary, depending on how you feel.
Makes the trailer really important, because I've seen some trailers for fun films and the trailers just are not good. They just don't capture quite what it is. Or I know I'll watch a trailer and sometimes I just think, I've seen all I need to see of that movie now, because the trailer has showed me all the climactic moments, so I don't need to see any more of it.
That's I could go on a tangent about this. If we have time at the end, I'll talk a bit about the trailer structure if you want. But in essence, as they've evolved over history, there's really been kind of the debate. There's the artistic trailer that wants to just create a mood and kind of lure you in. And then there's what they call the mini movie trailer that's like, why don't I just tell you what the whole film is? And if you liked that, then you'll probably think it's a safe bet to go see the film. And I think critically, people don't always love that option, but film marketers, they love it, because again, you're more likely to pay the money to put your butt in the seat later, which is interesting. So to just kind of wrap up on the what is film marketing part, I think the main thing I just wanted to have a takeaway here is there's your options that are more around publicity. So creating a buzz. These can be things like premiere events, these interviews you see on like talk shows or podcasts, for example. And then there's the promotion side. This can be more of like your paid media, your own media. So things like a website you might create as own media. Paid media is, again, paying to have your ad either thrown up on a billboard, thrown in front of a YouTube video, etc. And again, you want to find sort of like the magic cocktail of these that will work for your target audience. But for today, I decided we'd just zoom in a lot on the movie poster. If we have time, we can talk more about trailers, because I love trailers. But I thought for the sake of learning a bit more about the role of semiotics, posters are a good tool to use. So the first question is like, what is a poster? I mean, this is already in and of itself a flexible term. I think for some of us, posters look a lot like the image on the bottom middle, what you think of when you walk into a cinema and see a poster on the wall. But in like the greater family, you also, again, have things like what you see on the side of a bus or a bus stop, what you see on a billboard, etc. In short, posters are a physical form of promotion or digital form. Oftentimes the digital media we pick is based off of the original poster art, right? So it's a good starting point for really kind of the brand identity of the film. And the parts of it, I can't take credit for making this diagram, but I really liked it. You have everything from the actors' names are typically on a poster. You have a main image. The title is probably there, the credit block, what date it's coming out, the website, you can find out more about it. Often in film, you make this nice tagline that kind of like gives you a hint about what the film will be about, etc. So these are kind of your working parts. And in the next part, I'll dig a bit more into the different styles of poster. But before I move on, does anyone have any questions about, I guess, any of this terminology? Okay. So then the fun stuff. So what are the different styles of movie poster? Because there is, let's say, a main style, but it's not necessarily the only kind you see, again, out and about, whether you're going through your Instagram or walking down the streets of Slovenia. So I want to talk to you all again, keeping in mind, it's useful maybe if you like tell me verbally what you're thinking, but share with me your thoughts. When you see these two posters, what differences do you see in how they've been designed? They're both promoting the same film, but they look very different. So what differences do you see and why?
Right off the bat, I'd say the left one looks straight up like a horror film. I mean, that is scary to me. And the one on the right speaks more of like apocalypse kind of thing. Like it says action film, but also very dark. So I would think apocalyptic.
And what makes the one on the left seem horror to you? What specific elements of the poster?
Well, it looks like blood, definitely. And then there's that smile sort of symbol there, which is just frightening. I don't know. I don't have the words for that.
Like the fogginess of it too is
Can't quite
very,
see.
yeah, very, very scary.
The bloody font.
Yeah, the face looks like a skull.
But also it's not clear. So it's almost like the suspense of you don't know what's going to happen because you can't see it clearly.
Yeah, absolutely.
Hands reaching
It's-
towards you.
It's a
I also
shady.
think that Batman and the Joker are like common enough like reference points that to use the Joker is going to emphasize the darkness of the film, but to use Batman is going to be like, we know it's a superhero film ultimately. So I think that's marketing in that way as well.
Ooh, that's a good point too. That these are taking a bit of a swing, right? Like particularly the one on the left. I mean, you have sort of the Dark Knight, you have the Batman icon, you can kind of put together this is a Batman film, but it is interesting they don't tell you who this is. I mean, I think he's a well-known enough guy. They took that bet that most people will know it's the Joker, but if they don't know, then it's a good way of leaning into, let's say, this creepy horror side to the film. I'm curious with the poster on the right, I've heard people describe it a bit as action. What's an apocalypse? What specifically like makes it feel sort of like an action film? What elements of it?
I just think we know Batman is action. I don't know if there's anything that screams action in the film aside from maybe the burning building, but that's where I get the apocalyptic is from the burning building.
Oh, interesting.
I think the height of the building, like skyscraper, to me, it just screams action film. I think that's one of those just like symbols at work.
If there's a
And they
building, it's kind of like people need safety.
Fire is more.
Even the titles look different. Like the one on the right is, I'm sorry, our cat is playing with cardboard. It's very loud. The one on the right has like the Batman symbol is really like accented by that backlight. And it looks a lot more like an action superhero logo than the logo on the left, like barely looks like you can barely see it, which shows what they're emphasizing there.
Well, also look at Batman. I mean, you've got a show of strength, forward-looking muscles, like an action figure, and then lightning coming out of that. The little logo in the Dark Knight compared to the sort of faded profile of that iconic thing. So yeah, he's standing strong, looking just like a plastic action figure.
The
With
one
smoke and
on the
fire.
right, the one on the right has a lot more detail in it, a specific release date, the cast members, all of the other credits that are frequent in posters. The one on the left is sort of a teaser. The one on the right is sort of this is the story.
Bingo. Congrats to everyone for hitting so many of the points I wanted to make, but that was a very good one to end on because you are right. The one on the left was the teaser poster. We'll talk a bit more about what is a teaser poster in a second. And the one on the right is much more this main poster. There's just way more information in it. And I like a lot of the iconography, the symbols that you see in the Dark Knight poster on the right. You know, I think that one's, what I really wanted you to do, and you did well, is, again, you picked out very specific things. So like the big flame, right? We associate that with action apocalypse. An urban setting we associate with action films. Batman's body language, that's a symbol too. This whole, the way he's standing, the way even like where the camera is sort of looking up to him, that says so much about who he is and what kind of film this is going to be. So to break them down, there's typically, when you're promoting a film, 3 different kinds of posters that you'd have: a teaser, a main, and a character or celebrity poster. And as already said, the teaser, it's much more just this basic information to tease the audience. So it maybe won't tell you as much about the plot itself, but it might have a picture of the stars. It might have the name of the film, but as we saw, not always. Might have a release date, or may just say coming soon. A typical rule of thumb to consider is the bigger the film, typically the more enigmatic the teaser poster can be. They're taking a bet that the audience can fill in the gaps that makes it such a mysterious poster. And they're using that mystery to draw you in. They want you having questions in your head about it. So here's a few examples. I think when I first put this together, maybe I was in a bit of a dark place. So apologies if these are a little dark on your screen. But I love these examples because they are so minimalist, but they are the original teaser posters that were used. So can someone tell me, do they know what film is being promoted by the poster on the far left?
Halloween.
Halloween. How did you know that?
Jason's Mask.
Yeah, I was going to say The Mask.
Yeah, exactly. Now it doesn't say that, right? The only information on here is just basically the release date. But this mask is such a symbol. Or maybe you've never even seen the films, but it's become so well known. You just have to like throw the mask on a poster and you know who's going to be the star of this scary film. Now, what about the second to the left? Anyone know which film this is?
The Incredibles, right?
Which
is it
one?
the Incredibles? Or no? I don't know.
Is it the second Incredibles?
Incredibles 2. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, there's like a hidden Roman numeral 2 in there.
Bingo. So it's a well-known symbol that most people, even let's say if they've seen the film, they'll remember this is the Incredibles logo that they have on their uniform. If you haven't seen it, it's still, Disney is like such a big brand. People probably know it, but again, they altered it just very slightly to tease the audience. Like, oh, it's the sequel. But besides that, it doesn't say it's the Incredibles. They just went for a well-known symbol, wrote Disney, Pixar, coming soon. What about this guy over here? Second to the right. Anyone know what film this is?
King Kong.
King Kong, yeah.
Good one. Yeah, so it's King Kong. Again, you know, they gave you a date. They didn't need to put a title. They're just sort of betting on, we throw a big old ape on there, people will know who it is. I think this one's a little trickier. This is the one from 2003. I think this would be a harder strategy to try now with Planet of the Apes and such. Having come out, you have 2 competing primate-based franchises. And the last one I really like, There Will Be Blood, which is a good example of, you have this poster that admittedly, you know, it's pretty simple. It kind of looks like an old Bible. It just has the title on it. But this one they're selling on the idea of it's a Daniel Day-Lewis film. And if you know Daniel Day-Lewis, you know he is kind of like a rabid fan base. He's such a talented actor that for some people, that's all they need to know that they're going to go see that film. It's a Daniel Day-Lewis film. Cool. Doesn't matter what it's about. They're in. So this film was, teaser poster was really sort of going off of, they're not going to tell you hardly anything about what sort of film this will be, but they want to make sure you know who the star is.
You know, there was an interesting point about the first poster from RC and Audrey that we actually got the name wrong. We conflated the Halloween series and the Friday the 13th series because they're like just similar enough genre films.
Yeah. No, you're all right. That was my fault. It is Friday the third. I always have this issue with those, that it's not a huge slasher film person. That Halloween is the Michael Myers character with the painted mask. Isn't it like a Shatner mask? Anyone want to check me on that weird piece of trivia? I'm pretty sure they just like bought a rubber William Shatner mask from Star Trek, painted it white, and said, this is what our horror man's going to look like, but not Jason. Anyway, thank you for the fact check. So a main poster, as already was shared, is the one that has much more information on it. This is the poster you've made lots of agreements with, of like who's going to be featured on it. So this is the one that's much more likely to feature your production personnel, have these star names on it, the tagline, your website, maybe social media tags, and the distributors of the film. Character posters are like an interesting tertiary promotional leg of film posters that, like, sometimes your main poster is kind of built around like a character poster idea. It's basically, you're saying, okay, we really want to highlight an actor or actors. They're together, and that is our main selling point, that we have one certain actor, we're bringing together two certain actors, we have this whole group of actors that we've always wanted to see. It's a particularly common strategy for rom-coms. This idea of like, of course you want to see this film. Do you like this hot guy? Do you like this hot girl? We're bringing them together. Sometimes it's, I guess I shouldn't say it's always actors. Again, ensemble films bank on this a lot with their design for their main poster. Sometimes their selling point's a character. So Hunger Games is a good example of this, that at this point in time, Jennifer Lawrence wasn't a huge name. If you look, her name isn't hardly visible on this poster, but Hunger Games book series was huge. And so they were really banking on this idea of like, this heroine you love, this Katniss Everdeen, like we're bringing her to life. So come see this film. But the two posters on the right are an example of this sort of third stream of posters. They're not your main, they're not your teaser. They're additional promotional material where you're really highlighting that a certain character, a certain actor or celebrity is in your film. So you see these a lot at cinemas, to sort of like do extra promotion inside. You see it a lot with franchises. Well, not always. I mean, Inception's not franchise, although Christopher Nolan sometimes kind of feels like his own franchise. But again, they're a really useful additional promotional tool to have, where you have these posters that really just zoom in on like, look, this actor is in here. Do you like this actor? Great, come see our film. But with all of these assets that you're creating, the goal is consistency. So between your posters and your other print or digital materials, there should be this consistent brand identity, which we'll talk a bit more about the conventions that go into that. And there should be a sense of consistency in the tone of between the posters and the trailers, right? You don't want a poster that looks like it's a happy rom-com, and suddenly people are seeing a trailer that looks like a slasher film. They're just going to be left feeling a bit confused, to be honest. It's obviously, as Dark Knight showed, you can play a bit with genre conventions and go after slightly different moods, but they should still feel connected. So a good example, I think, again, Marvel films, these big franchise films, offer an interesting, consistent template for this. You have for Ant-Man, for example, on the left, it's the teaser poster, and it's just the name Ant-Man, the date it came out, and a teeny tiny little Ant-Man in the center of the poster. In the middle, it's just the very traditional layout for superhero films. You have the title, you have that whole credit block, you have quite a few actors' names, no one's much bigger than the other. And you have the superhero himself, and you see little small versions of everyone. But again, they released this like set of tertiary character posters too, and that's where they really zoom in on one actor. So it's like, oh my gosh, do you like Paul Rudd? Please come see our film. It has Paul Rudd. And again, similar sensation with Thor. You'll see this a lot with, again, particularly large franchise films. So to the main event of today. We mentioned semiotics, but they haven't necessarily come up yet. So I thought we'd use the next half of this to really dig into how do you analyze a movie poster to decide if you've designed one that will impart the right kind of meaning for the audience. Basically, media is constructed from signs. So if you're going to become a media producer, a film marketer, you need to understand how to use signs to communicate quickly and meaningfully with your audience. That's where semiotics come into play. This is just like the science of sort of unraveling the meaning that we put into our products. It's everywhere. So in the words we use, the books we read, the art we hang on our walls, the TV shows we watch, the movies we consume, they all have certain meanings built into them. And semiotics is just basically figuring out how meaning is produced by signs and symbols. We've already actually talked a lot about this. A lot of you are using that language to tell me about, for example, the Dark Knight posters. But let's just make sure we're all on the same page for what semiotics means. So an image, it represents something, but let's say, how does it produce meaning? So I'll give you a super simple example. Let's take a word like tree, right? The letters T-R-E-E. It's not like when you put those letters together, they don't look like a tree, they don't sound like a tree, but we've decided you hear that word and something more or less like the picture at the bottom pops up in your mind, or vice versa. You look at that and probably the word, it's a tree, pops up in your head. Now, of course, this is a bit simplistic because whenever I do this with all my Dutch students, it's not the word tree that comes to mind for them. It's the word boom, which is tree in Dutch. So of course, signs and symbols, the point is that they all, we put meaning into them. So I think everyone here can agree that, again, if I said the word tree, something like this probably pops up in your head. So in short, denotation, we're throwing buzzwords around here, it's just sort of the inarguable sense of what's actually there. Again, with the other one, we could all agree that was a tree. So it's just kind of this literal meaning that we're giving to a certain image or to a certain word. So here's a good one, like the denotative meaning of the image here, we can probably all agree that's a house, that's a home, right? But this image might produce extra meaning for some of you. So my question is, this image right here, is it familiar to anyone? I see some nodding.
Oh, that's Harry Potter?
Drive.
Very good. It is Harry Potter, number 4, Privet Drive. So this is an example of, again, we all denotated, we can all agree whether you've ever seen Harry Potter or not, that's a picture of a house. But for some of you, you looked at it and were like, wait a minute, I know that house. I know that house's address. And, maybe that gave you like a warm, excited feeling. You're like, oh, I love Harry Potter. I'm a millennial, so it's part of my identity to love Harry Potter. And that's where we get more into like connotative motion or connotation. So what does it represent? What does a symbol stand for? And so that was the key difference here is, well, maybe we can all agree that something looks like something. The meaning it produces isn't going to be identical for every single person in the world. So going back to the initial word of home, that's a good word where, again, we can all agree maybe a home is a house, but for some people, when I say the word home, other things might come to mind for you. So maybe tell me, when I say the word home, in like a word or two, what comes to mind for you?
Well, there's safe, an emotional reaction, happiness,
Comfort.
Mhm.
A general location where you grew up.
Yeah. What else?
Family.
Yeah, I agree. What else?
Where you feel comfortable.
Mhm.
Mhm.
I like all these answers, and they're all a bit different, right? It can be your hometown, it can be your family, it can just be sort of a place that you feel safe. For other people, to be honest, home could have the complete opposite feeling, right? Home might not have been a place they felt safe. It could be a sign or symbol you're assuming is going to create a really positive feeling, but for some people, it's actually quite negative. It's hard to know. You usually always get one person who says their bed, but maybe in Corona times, or I don't know, maybe because we're on an alumni call, no one wanted to admit that. So the point here is semiotics. It's the study of signs and symbols and understanding that if I'm looking at, in this case, an image, what meaning will it give to someone? So we might all agree what it's a picture of, but when it comes to meaning, what it's saying to someone in here, it's going to be affected a bit by their social upbringing, their cultural upbringing, their prior knowledge on that sign or symbol and the context with which that sign or symbol is in. This was a great study on this at one point, that even just, the way you pair two images together, it says a lot about what they are. So you could have a picture of like a smiling guy and like a puppy, and you're like, oh, that's nice. You can have a smiling guy and like, I don't know, a scantily clad woman, and you're like, ooh, he seems a little dicey. So context could affect things even in that way. So to swing on back down to posters, semiotics are used a lot to construct what we call genre conventions. So these sort of written or visual symbols that we associate with certain movie genres. So this can be the typography we use, the color scheme, the images chosen, certain actors, writers, directors, or even the way in which you write the tagline for your film. Because again, we have sort of decided, we broadly as a society, but there's certain things we associate with certain genres. So if I say romance, immediately coming to mind are probably some certain images, certain colors, certain, cursive writing maybe. And so that's where semiotics becomes super useful for deciding how you're going to construct your poster. So to break these down a bit quickly, typography, it's the font and how it appears. So for example, we have one on the left. It's very much a horror film. They're using much more of this like blood red again, right? So it looks a bit drippy or maybe on fire. Another one looks much more like handwritten. It feels like heartfelt, authentic and such. And I particularly like the Lego movie one, that they sort of wrote the title using Legos. It's a fun nod. This feels like a very fun way to write your title, which again tells me very quickly what kind of film this is going to be. There's also just certain color schemes we associate with films. So for example, horror, there's certain colors. It's either like a very like muted palette, like looks very sort of dead, lots of grays and browns and such, or it's kind of black, white, red combo. Really saturated, like lots of like mixed colors together. We kind of associate more with kids' films. You saw that in the Lego movie. See it again here with the Rugrats movie. Something like The Blind Side, this sort of inspirational film, right? They use like really soft and bright colors. Like you see them walking into this bright horizon. It feels very hopeful in the colors that they choose. And, for better or for worse, we associate certain colors with certain genders, for example. So when we had Mean Girls, the film, we went for our pinks and our purples and such to really lean into a girlish theme. The images themselves that we choose, that we sort of decide, okay, again, if someone's going to walk by, they have 3 seconds to look at this poster, that's not a lot of time to communicate with them what sort of film this is. So your image is that anchor to your poster. And if you really want to communicate a certain genre, then you have sort of like a template picked out for you. So if you're this romance film, right, the not quite kissing, but almost kissing image is like an old standby to say, all right, again, do you like romance? Like, I've communicated that to you very fast. Do you like these two people? Well, looks like you'll probably get to see them kiss if you come see this film. And horror is kind of a fun, interesting one. Again, they sort of try to figure out how can we pick a creepy, foreboding, scary image to communicate what our film will be about, and to, in your heart, kind of give you that scared feeling to know this is going to be a horror film, and hopefully it will have a scary impact on me. Certain genres are associated with certain actors, certain writers, certain directors. So semiotics also isn't just about signs and symbols that are visual, it can also be about writing. When we, Stephen King, anyone want to tell me what genre he's associated with, or is that too easy of a question? It's horror, right? So it's, you just kind of throw his name onto something, and we kind of know what genre this film's going to be. What about Melissa McCarthy? What kind of films do we typically associate her with?
Comedy.
Exactly. So it's, you know, you look at this Tammy poster on the right, obviously the body language is really comedic. The kind of reddish orange titles has like a fun pop, but having her name really big just very quickly communicates, got another Melissa McCarthy style comedy on our hands. So all of those elements together, again, they help you to construct a poster that produces meaning quickly, and again, typically can show you a genre very quickly. You can also use semiotics to help you better articulate your positioning. So again, the way we position a film, positioning is just when something comes to the top of our mind, what appears there and how are people perceiving it. So we kind of have typically a certain target group or target groups in mind when we design something like a movie poster. We kind of think about, again, where are they geographically located? How old are they, for example? Are we going after a certain gender? Maybe a certain level of education? Maybe it's certain things they like. Maybe it's people who are already fans of a certain franchise. We think about how we can clearly show off those elements to attract them to this. You see this a lot. Again, Christopher Nolan's a good example of this, that whenever there's a new film from him coming out, it always is like from the director of The Dark Knight or from Christopher Nolan. They'll sort of test both, I've noticed, because they're going after a target group, which is fans of his other films. Yeah, and it changes a bit by country. So here's an interesting example. Season actually will play a big role. So this is kind of an older film, The Family Man with Nicolas Cage. It was released at Christmas time. So they very much made their cinematic poster very Christmassy in nature because they really wanted to play into the season. They said, okay, we want people to think this is the film you bring your family to at Christmas time. So you can really see, it's a little small. My apologies. Can I zoom in? No, I can't. That's not doing that. So you can see it's like a window, perfect family there, and him staring at that perfect family. So they're really positioning it on that when they did their theatrical release. But as you can see, DVD, totally different story. The DVD came out in July, so they very much went for a much lighter look. I mean, there's still the funny contrast. That's kind of this, you've got the way Nicolas Cage looks, his body language against this bright sunny day. But again, this is an interesting tell of the DVD cover in the Netherlands versus the DVD cover in the US. You can see the slight differences they made to, again, very quickly communicate with either a Dutch audience or an American audience, what kind of film is this, and why they should buy the DVD.
Aren't the titles frequently changed depending on the country in which a film is released?
Yes. Again, I feel you have a very good power of like, the moment I'm ready to switch my slide, you ask the perfect question. So here's a great example of that. Beauty and the Beast. Here's different versions of their main poster depending on which country it was released in. And the Netherlands is interesting because they do almost all of their promotion in English because they subtitle films. They leave them in the original language and then just subtitle in Dutch. Whereas in Germany, they dub over everything.
dub
Hire
everything.
voice actors. You're very
Yeah.
brilliant, Jennifer.
I spent a lot of time in Germany.
Exactly. And so it makes me a little selfish. I'm grateful that I don't have to deal with dubbing, to be honest, but it affects the marketing of the film. So it's much nicer in that case to translate it into the home language. So it's a fun fact, I guess, about the Netherlands, that they leave it in English. But it's more than just that. As you can see, they didn't just change the titles. These posters look really different. So I'm curious to hear from you all. What are some differences you see in how these posters are designed?
Well, it's interesting that the one in Germany and the one in China, the beast is a lot more prominent than the one from the US.
Ooh, you're absolutely right.
Well,
You
and
know.
the colors are gold and brown
Right.
and white, with the accent on her dress and the background. Whereas in the blue one, you know, it's softer and she's, like you say, she's brought out, and the beast is practically just a shadow, you
Right.
know.
And it emphasizes all the other characters.
Yes.
I mean, there's a lot more, you know, there's all the other characters are down in the one from the US, but the focus is on the beauty and the beast, as the German says, the Schöne on the beast. That's exactly what it says, you know.
Yeah. The characters in the USA version, it's weird to me because those characters spend 96% of the movie as like household objects and not
Right.
They're really playing on us knowing who, you know, Josh Gad and whoever else is on there is, whereas I'm sure that Josh Gad is not like a household name in China. And also I wanted to point out that the USA one may be blue because I think it was released also around Christmas time.
Yeah.
And so maybe because it's very snowy, which like I don't really associate. I associate a little bit with Beauty and the Beast, but I'm not like, oh, that's a winter movie. So that's an interesting color scheme difference you pointed out.
Kind of has that Frozen look, you know.
That's a good point. I had never thought of that. I had thought of the release season before, but I hadn't considered that Disney might have been like, a couple of years ago, Frozen went really well. Maybe let's stylistically like give a nod to that.
In fact, I think I see Olaf at that door.
So that's really that's a great observation about why the cast is so much more prominent in the American one. I'm curious what other differences you see between these three posters.
The Chinese one has all the cartoon characters running up the staircase and in the background.
Yes.
Unlike the German one, which has the same main image, but none of the peripheral characters.
Absolutely. And keep it on the Chinese one. China releases these days a lot of really big budget, super glammed up historical fantasy drama films. And the posters for those are just like, they're crazy. There's so much like beautiful fabrics and great landscapes and shiny things. And this really reminds me of those posters because it's gold, it's sparkly, it's like all palace and finery. And that just connects in my mind to other Chinese big budget posters you might see.
Oh yeah, and also just the meaning of gold in China is different than here. And so, you know, people are going to associate that color with a different meaning in China than they would necessarily here as well.
The U.S. one makes the heroine more prominent and dominant, not so much dominated by the beast, and focusing more on her choices. And so I like that she's the figure. I'm not wild about the fact that she's looking off the poster, but I like that she is in a more powerful position than looking up to the overpowering beast.
I think I actually like the poster from China because I'm looking at the American one. It could be Oliver, you know, the musical Oliver. It kind of makes me cold to look at it, even though it's a beautiful poster. But as you all were saying, that the one from China is rich. It emphasizes the two characters that are the most important, and yet down on the steps are all the supporting staff in the form that we recognize them, not in their human form. And the steps follow, you know, allow your eye to go up and hit that gorgeous dress. And then I love the candles, which are a prominent symbol in that film. they're just beautifully lighting the background. I really like it. Plus the Chinese characters, I like them too.
Yeah.
These are also wonderful observations. And I again, really, you all have hit pretty much every point I could think of, and many new ones I hadn't considered. A couple just other small things to note is it's interesting if you look at in the Chinese one, it seems like in the American and the German one, they really kind of make a point to name all the actors, and they're all, again, approximately of similar standing in like the hierarchy of the typography. There's not one name that's bigger than the others. But I'm going to start with, I don't read Chinese, so bear with me on that. But my sense of looking at this is they're not emphasizing all the actors this time. It's so for them, that wasn't like the big selling point. It goes back to, again, why they would choose to show off the animated version of the characters, the one you're going to spend the most time with, as opposed to the physical version of the
I'm
actor.
not sure they're listing any of the names of the people. I mean, I read a little Chinese, and I'm not sure they're showing any names of the people on the board, the poster at all.
Thank you.
But
see, one day I'm gonna ask someone who knows, so then I can tell people, and I'll seem much more educated about the Chinese poster than I do at this moment.
I mean, I need to see it bigger because they're hard to read, but I don't think they're names.
Yeah, my sense of this is the top parts look more like critical reviews because they have a little.
Yeah, I mean, they don't typically Chinese people's names, in other words.
Yeah.
So
is there a tagline anywhere in this? I don't see one.
Yeah, down at the bottom, I think that's the tagline.
They have the date, it looks
I
like.
think that's the release date.
Okay,
Yeah.
again, I can't see it very well, but
Yeah, I don't think that they have a tagline, and I'd say a tagline's not always a requirement. But I mean, with something like this, I would expect a tagline like "Tale as old as time," you know.
well, honestly, if I could see it bigger, I might be able to tell, but I don't read that much Chinese, so I can't guarantee that I know.
But
I forgot a lot.
I wanted to acknowledge another comment too about Belle's eye line in the poster on the left. Now, this is like a common technique you see, right? The sort of heads back to back layered together in the posters, but I agree that that's actually a bit of a weakness of this poster. I think that it's a bit of a wasted opportunity that she's the thing that catches your eye the most, I'd argue. It plays a bit off of kind of marketing psychology, this idea that, especially in like the Western world, we read left to right. That makes more sense, I think, with my camera. So you sort of start in this upper left-hand corner. She's a little more highlighted. Her face is really eye-catching. So first thing you're gonna look at. But her eyes are closed and she's looking this way. So it's like from a visual perspective, I think it would have been nicer if she either gave a little bit more eye contact or had her head better directed towards, say, the name of the film itself. That's my own critique. But again, even just the direction the head is, that can communicate a bit about how you should be looking at a poster to help build meaning in it. You see this again in the other two, that they're looking at each other, that face direction says a lot about these two characters. It's not just Beauty and the Beast that does this. I did look this one up, so I seem less ignorant now. That, for example, this film came out, it's called In the Heart of the Sea, a couple of years ago. But when it was released in Japan, they renamed it The Battle with the White Whale. There's quite a tradition with renaming films in Japan. So, of course, they wanted to give it a big renaming with its time-honored tradition. And they'll redesign posters in such a way. These are sort of the main posters they created for each market, but they're communicating very, very different things, right? So the one on the left, it's just sort of like maybe a whaler who's fallen overboard. It's like, oh, look at this big guy. It's almost a bit horror-esque in that regard. Whereas the other one on the right, it looks more like a remake of Free Willy, almost. Like you've got your handsome men staring out into the way. So they really went for different, not only changes in titles to communicate meaning, but very, very different imagery. And these are the teaser posters for Jurassic World in the US versus China. And again, different selling points. still clearly big old dinosaur film, but the sort of that main image focus, the coloring and such, they went for a very different feel. So why use semiotics in film marketing? So semiotics we typically think of as more of an academic practice, but it's become more and more, it's an easy way for an advertiser, an entertainment marketer, to think about how they can target consumers more quickly and more effectively. Because when you use signs and symbols that will communicate well with that target group, you can tell a visual narrative much more effectively. So by really understanding who your target group is, you can pick the signs and symbols that, again, won't just connect with them on a denotative level. Well, we can all agree there's some big dinosaurs on this poster, but we'll connect with them in there. So really understanding based off of their social background, their values, their context and prior knowledge of maybe the franchise or the genre, picking the right, everything from color to writing to tagline that will communicate with them very quickly and very effectively, because you've only got about 3 seconds with this kind of material to connect with them. So we are now at sort of the breakout room side of this mini session. This is my tips and trick when I teach this to my students. They are ultimately working towards, they're all making their own films and then they design their own posters. So this is my cheat sheet I make for them. But today I'm giving it to you to analyze an existing film poster. And I picked a few of my favorites. So when analyzing a poster, let's say, I would ask yourself these questions. Who do you think the intended audience is of the poster? So maybe their age, their location, their interests. How are genre conventions appearing? So again, the themes, the settings, the font, everything like that. How are they on this poster communicating a genre? What clues do you see on here about the narrative? What enigmas are there? So what's mysterious about it? And what written text is on here? Even the rating, for example, says a lot about a film. So if you see a film that's rated G versus rated R, that writing very quickly tells you a lot about what kind of film this is going to be. And of course, because we were here to talk about semiotics, so looking at how are you signifying meaning to the audience? What signs and symbols have been placed on this poster to create meaning quickly and impactfully? So my advice in this moment, I know in advance everyone received a list of what film poster they're meant to analyze. I think what will be easiest is if you don't already have that email open, maybe open it up. So you'll have a PDF or PNG of the poster on your computer. I'd also recommend maybe taking a screenshot of this slide because what I'm going to ask is for each room to take about 10 minutes to talk to each other about their poster and to sort of be prepared to share their thoughts with the other groups. So this will give you kind of a sense of what you could talk about and what you could share with the group. So that being said,
okay.
Does anyone have any questions?
Yeah. Oh, I'm sorry. My question was, do you want me to open the rooms?
I guess that does anyone have any questions about the breakout room exercise?
How long will the breakout session be?
10 minutes.
Thank you.
No problem. Okay, then I think we can go ahead and go into breakout rooms and we'll see everyone back in 10 minutes. And I'm curious to hear your thoughts on your classic film poster.
Okay, well, in theory, everyone was pre-assigned a breakout room, so this is supposed to work like magic when I press the button. But we'll see what happens. If you don't find yourself in a breakout room, I'm sure we'll be able to figure that out and put you in one. So here goes. Okay, Chris Goodness. What is he supposed to be in? Can you help me?
I have to admit, I was really grateful when I found out as the alumni speaker, it wasn't my job to sort people into breakout rooms because I've never done that on Zoom, so I can't.
We figured you're doing enough.
No, I know it's so funny seeing which video platforms everyone's been forced to have to learn how to become very handy in the last year or so. For me, it was Teams, but for others, I imagine it's been Zoom, and you're probably all great wizards at this. Well, I guess while Sharon's finalizing that, I don't know, anyone have a question or a comment? An interesting thought they'd like to share with the group?
I think it's pretty much just us at this point.
Oh, good. Oh, yeah, I see them.
Yeah, there we go.
Okay, I will stop sharing. It's so funny in Teams, I can always see my PowerPoint and the chat.
Yeah, you're right. Like, because I've used Skype less, but like Teams and Zoom and Google Meets and like, you know, all these things that essentially accomplish the same thing, but just in a slightly different way.
Yeah, so that's been the one, I wouldn't call it like a downside, but it was harder for me to see when they all disappeared. And yeah, I didn't see the chat. Did anyone really leave comments in the chat?
There were a couple of comments. There weren't any like questions, so
Okay.
I didn't call any out for you.
Okay.
I mentioned the comment that RC and Audrey made about our mismasking, which I thought was an interesting point.
Yes. Oh no. Someone is alone in a breakout room.
Oh, awesome. Okay.
What's it supposed to be? Let's see.
Oh, shoot. It's,
Michael, Evelyn, and Elizabeth are supposed to be with him.
but it's RC. Is Audrey in there? I know there's nobody. I can move somebody. I'd have to move somebody from another one, or I can put one of you in there.
I mean, I can hop in if you need me to participate.
Yeah, you want to go talk to Audrey and RC about the Star Wars poster?
Yeah, I'm doing it. Hang on. Let me screenshot this. Let me follow your instructions, Susannah, so I know what I'm supposed to do.
Okay, whenever you're ready. I'm sorry, that one wasn't like on my, yeah.
No, it's tough. Because it looks like quite a decent number didn't come who signed up. So I think that's probably just, the bad luck of there's always going to be the one group that this happens.
Yeah.
I'm just going to take a picture of my phone, save myself some trouble. All right, Sharon, I'm good.
Okay, bye. Let's hope that worked.
I think that's fine.
Okay.
Worse, at least he has the Star Wars poster,
Yeah. Well, I was trying to look and make notes on the attendance list and how Stephanie had broken out people into breakout rooms. And I was like, oh my gosh, like, is every breakout room at least going to have, more than one person? So.
Yeah, oops. I host open days sometimes at my work, and I don't know. I found that it's so hard to know how many will actually come when they sign up that I typically just sort them right then and there.
Yeah. Yeah. Okay. Well, Evan and I have been having fun. I've been talking to him a lot, and people are probably like, what? Not that.
Who's she talking?
Hopefully people aren't looking at me. That's not why they're here, but like, I'm so aware that I'm like in this half of my screen and I keep looking this way at him and talking to him, but well, this is great. And I'm glad that, so many people have been interacting with you and clearly with comments that are thoughtful. So
yeah, no, they've been a great group to chat with. They had really good comments. A lot of comments, again, I hadn't thought of before. So that's always like a breath of fresh air because I've looked at some of these posters like a lot of times now. And
yeah.
But yeah, so that's, I don't know how many other sessions like this have happened. Did they start today or earlier this week? I don't remember.
We sort of have almost like one every day for 2 weeks.
Okay.
And so we're all sort of taking, turns staffing ones that are interesting to us or whatever. So, or, but, I was like, ooh, Evan might like this. I'm going to sign. No, I mean, to me, it's interesting as well, because I like to talk about that stuff with you, but yeah. Which movie poster would you like to?
I don't know. I mean, I'm probably abundantly familiar with
I think you
the
are.
Social Network above all the other ones.
Yeah.
It's a good pick. And I was talking to her a little bit about just the trailers that in talking about those, Inception and the Social Network are two of those that often do get discussed. Those are like among the best trailers.
Yeah.
To
Particularly Inception. I always use that one because they're sort of like the founder of the I can't do it without sounding embarrassing. Yes, the like it's that really reshaped, like there's like audible, that's like a whole other layer we didn't talk about with posters, but these audible cues.
Right.
And the Inception one, yeah.
Yeah, and that's like we've talked about that in some of my classes before, how there are now almost genres for trailers themselves, and I think Inception and the Social Network are just really good jumping off points for the blah action. Whatever, you got some big name actors involved, and then the Social Network started the whole trope of using a different cover of a song using Radiohead's Creep, and now every movie does that. So
oh man, I hadn't thought of that. That's a big reason. Yeah, I mentioned that trend as well. It's funny, I actually reference the film that broke the trend for me, which is the film. Have you ever seen Geostorm?
No, I remember some of the trailers for it. Yeah,
good film. Like don't see it, but it's
didn't hear good things about it.
No, but it's just that trope too. It actually just sort of drives me nuts now when films do it.
One that used the what song did that use the cover of? Was that What a Wonder? I feel like I saw a trailer of What a Wonderful World. That was really
memory.
I figured it was one of those like natural disaster sorts of movies.
Exactly. So it's the end of the world, but we're singing What a Wonderful World.
Oh my God, isn't that so ironic, right?
Exactly. But it's, oh man, but even it's just so overdone. So that now it's not effective anymore. Like when it was first, it's like, oh, edgy, unexpected, but now it's all expected and kind of grating for me. A really good trailer example though that breaks convention. Have you ever seen Pride and Prejudice and Zombies?
No, I'm vaguely familiar with it though.
That's such a good one because it's it's a really good example of how they completely changed the trailer based on market, because if you look up the one in America, it's really action filmy, because it's Pride and Prejudice except zombie apocalypse. So it's a weird genre mix anyway because of that, but they really lean into the action badass side of things with the music choices they make and the clips they pick. But then the British one really went in for humor. So they really try to make it feel like normal Pride and Prejudice, and then just twist, oh, there's a zombie now. Who saw that coming? And it's just so funny seeing such different cuts for a trailer for the same film.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I don't even think about international stuff.
I know. Yeah, right. Yeah. It does say that the breakout room time is over, so I'm going to close those and bring people back. I hope. Okay, I can take you off the screen.
I don't know if people don't know I'm here.
Hi.
Oh, they still have a whole minute. Okay, dang it. I should have pressed that button sooner.
That's okay.
51 seconds. Oops. Oh, well.
Then they at least know how much time they have left.
They do, yeah. So they can see that countdown or whatever. And so they, in theory, know to wrap it up. But yeah. So are you 5 or 6 hours ahead of us?
I'm 6 hours.
Okay. Okay.
So it's 8:21 p.m. here.
Yeah. Well, thank you for taking time out of your evening to do this with us, for us. We appreciate it.
Oh, it's no problem. I mean, especially in pandemic times, like this is quite a social event to have on a Saturday evening.
I know, right?
I'm not even, well, I guess our curfew hasn't happened yet, but we do have a curfew here. So it's
Okay.
Okay.
there was going to be no wild Saturday night over here in the Netherlands.
I know the school I teach in Germany, they're going to be online until June. So I'm actually teaching them online from here.
Oh man, you are a brave woman. Are you 5 hours ahead then? Or
6
no,
hours.
yeah.
So no, I get them in the afternoon, their afternoon. So I'm not teaching them in the middle of the night. That is not going to happen.
I'll admit, we actually have a significant number of international students in our program. Like what is it? We have about 600 students enrolled across the 4 years in our degree, which is huge.
Wow.
But in specifically the international version, so the English spoken version, about half of them are international students, so not Dutch. A handful are from either the Dutch Caribbean. We get quite a lot of students, and a couple from America. And a few of them went home because of the pandemic, and they still come to class. And it is like, I felt such guilt the first time I met a student at like 9 a.m. our time, knowing they had to get up at 3 a.m. to come to class.
Oh no, they originally suggested I had to be face-to-face with them all day because they go to school from 9 to 4:30 at my school. And I'm like, yeah, no, that's 3 a.m. That's not gonna happen. So.
Well, Susannah, everybody is back from their breakout rooms. Hopefully they had great discussion, and I'll let you pick it up again from here.
All right, then I just, for about a minute or so a group, I'm just curious to hear what you think when you sort of looked through your poster. Again, what did you see when you looked at it with this critical film marketing eye when it came to audience, genre, narrative, and semiotics? And let me know maybe when you're talking if you or if anyone in your group had seen the film or had not seen the film, because I think that's always really interesting with how we look at a poster. I always sort of love it when people get posters for films they've never seen, because that's a true test of, is this poster working? So group one are Star Wars men. Tell me a bit about your thoughts on this poster.
Yeah, we had some thoughts. I was so glad that Jordan showed up and saved me because I was alone there for a second. It was great talking about it with him. So just regarding like clues to the narrative, something that I realized and we had fun discussing was that no one knew anything about Star Wars in 1977. And we were bringing now all this knowledge like Luke, Leia, X-Wings, Death Star, all that. They didn't know anything. This wasn't even called A New Hope on the poster. So with that in mind, what are clues to the narrative? You have this big, weird space thing, this globe. It's really ominous. You have, Darth Vader in the background. You don't know who he is, but he looks a little weirdly skeletal. And we briefly discussed like just the positioning, which is super bright, of Leia and Luke, or to the 1977 eye, these white-clad heroes. Jordan said really aptly that it's very Arthurian. It's very much an Excalibur pose. And they even wear this clothing that's kind of like medieval-ish. And Leia is looking like kind of a Conan the Barbarian babe down there. And Luke is totally ripped. So you get this deep mythological thing. Like you have the knight, you have the woman, but there's also a twist because she has a gun. So that's more adventure promised for you. And then just the title, Star Wars. Again, no A New Hope. And it's just two simple words. You get battles in space, and that's it. And even the font, it's super big. It's just promising something huge and to the point. Yes. There you go.
What do you think about the tagline?
We didn't discuss that actually, but looking at it now, it again taps into that mythos idea a long time ago, which is very Arthurian, very kind of fantasy, but this is sci-fi. So they're kind of combining the two for this legendary feel. And the idea that the galaxy is far, far away, it promises that anything is possible because this is not your world. And you see the little droids down there and you see these spaceships that are swooping up all together. And that promises like military big battles kind of thing, where this realm of imagination and limitless ideas kind of thing.
Yes. Thank you very much for sharing. I agree. I think it's really leans into the fantasy side of space fantasy with a tagline like that. I think you've mentioned so many great symbols, especially the colors, right? This white equals good, black equals bad. That again, it's simplistic, but it's effective. And I think even that Excalibur pose you mentioned is very clever, and it's almost like cross-like too. You could really go into a whole Christianity side to that sign and symbol as well if you wanted to, and which would make a lot of sense in the 70s. What about Silence of the Lambs? What, for about a minute, tell me what you thought of this poster.
Colleen, you want to start?
No, you go ahead, Peter.
Oh, okay. Well, it's big on enigma, and the title is not a giveaway of anything, and there's no tagline, but there's a kind of an ominous and sinister quality about the face of maybe that's Jodie Foster. It's hard to say, but she looks pretty skeletal in the way that the face is outlined. And the this moth with a death mask on its back is certainly a discomforting image, as are the red eyes. But you know, I could not tell a thing about the movie from this poster other than that it's sort of creepy.
Yeah. Have you seen the movie, by the way?
I have only seen portions of the movie, but
Okay.
that's where I got my recipe for fava beans and liver.
I'm curious. Does anyone know the secret of like the symbol in the symbol of the skull on the butterfly or the moth? Sorry. Okay, it's hard to see, but look it up later. This is what I call like a long-term payoff symbol that you can pretty from here already tell it's a skull. But once you've seen the film, you know this is a film that's all about a serial killer, right? He kills women. And actually the skull itself is made from naked women. So once you know that about the film, suddenly it's like when you go back to look at it, it really resonates more. Really good. Thank you both. And I agree. I think with the signs and symbols, two things that pop out to me is, again, this tagline that it's a bestseller. They were really playing off of the book target audience. So people who like the book, they'll like the film, or maybe they'll go on to buy the book now if they haven't and make some more money together, joint promotion. And I also think it plays a bit off of like maybe like the milk carton kid. This maybe my reading of it, like the sort of the lost poster. Of course, she's very silenced, right? So
as far as what the target audience was concerned, we didn't get very far. It's rated R, so that means that it's not a family-friendly film. But you know, beyond that, psychopaths, I don't know who would be the target audience, but it would be an adult audience.
Very good. You're right. The rating tells you so much so quickly about what kind of film this is for or who this film is for. So it's already a much more mature audience. And I think a poster like this is definitely, it's not leaning heavy into like the male audience, I'd say, because they're not going for something overly gory or objectifying. To be really simplistic. Obviously, there's many other ways to sell to men. What about Little Miss Sunshine?
Just to tag off on what we just talked about, we felt like this was a family film, but it's rated R. So it's a kind of an interesting, I don't know. It definitely it shows you the whole family and everything. It makes you think it'll be, and kind of sunshine makes it sound happy-go-lucky. But it's a rated R family film, which is interesting combination.
Right. What kind of genre do you think this film is?
So the yellow and the brightness, it's like, it feels like comedy. And the tagline is, I can't read it now, but it's like a family on the verge of a breakdown. So yeah, that gives you that sense of comedy.
A happy breakdown.
And that, yeah, so, I mean, and going back with so it's, the audience was, we felt like it was more, because it seems like a quirky, like the bus, is kind of like a quirky car already, and then, so it's kind of a quirky film. Oh, this is actually a different.
Yeah, ours had like all these little
yeah.
reviews and stuff on it. And so like the reviews were from like Rolling Stone, and there was a mention of
Sundance.
And so like we thought that was targeting a certain audience by just putting those things there.
Yeah, ooh, but see, now this goes back to your earlier question about the role of film festivals and such. So yeah, they updated, this was the poster before, and then they added those quotes in. I forgot to change it, so that was my fault, but really good point that by putting things from, say, Sundance, that already says there's a certain kind of person who says, ooh, a Sundance quote. I trust that. I want to see a film that recommended by them.
And you've got the names of the character. There's nothing about the story really, but you have the names of the actors on the top. So you're looking
very
for
good.
And we were trying to decide, I think at this point, maybe Steve Carell wasn't as big of a actor then.
Yeah.
I looked it up, it was 2006, but I don't remember what else came out.
The Office was out at that point, but
Okay.
I would say, but it's also interesting, he's not the main character. So I think that may have also played into why maybe they didn't want to oversell his presence in the film, because it's very much an ensemble film. But that's a really good point, that you might think if it's the height of The Office, why wouldn't you really emphasize comedy comedy? But really good observation. I love this poster for that reason, that conventions wise, it feels like comedy. It feels like it could be a family film, but the R, that suddenly throws us into the enigma zone where you're like, what kind of film is R-rated, but also a family film? And it turns out it's one where, again, they are on the verge of a breakdown. And if you haven't seen it, it's a good film, but yeah, a lot of bad stuff happens to them along the way.
I like
very indie.
I was just gonna say, I like the poetry where they're like trying to push start the car, so it's like a physical, actual breakdown that mirrors their family breakdown.
I never thought of that till right now. That's a wonderful observation. Okay, what about Inception?
You want me to summarize?
Yeah, go ahead.
So to your point about the ensemble film, it's really clear this is not an ensemble film. This is a Leonardo DiCaprio film, both by his name at the top, and he's the big guy right in the middle. We both agree this is appealing to, it's an intellectual film. Having read my homework, I knew that when it's blue and luminous, it often means it's science fiction. So I don't know if I would have known that before. We noticed the business suits imply power. The only woman is in the background and she's not wearing a business suit. She's the edgy person wearing a little red. So she's not like a Princess Leia, but she's definitely going to be that outlier and a little tough. There's lots of guys and only one woman and one person of color, which tells us a lot about the target audience. We know that men will go to movies about men and women will also go to movies about men. So how convenient that we don't really need a lot of women to lure us in. And I wonder if this movie would be different now than when it first came out, because we're now starting to see people of color as a target market that clearly don't see it that way. Everybody else jump in, because that's all I can remember at this moment.
Wendy, you took some notes, I bet.
I maybe. Well, I mean, we all agreed that, I mean, architecturally, this poster symbolizes complexities and perspectives, because the tagline is, what is it? Something about,
Your mind is the scene of the crime.
Yes, thank you. So I particularly, well, I think we all agreed that street scene with Leonardo smack in the middle, and then that street, that's a streetscape initially offset with the red letters of Inception. And then it turns from a street view to an aerial view, looking down on rooftops. And almost like you were saying, Mary, the complexity of the brain and the different departments and compartmentalizations. And
it's a mind bender. I mean, it
Yes.
literally, you look at it and the image bends and it says that your mind is the scene of the crime. So it is showing visually what it purports to be, and it's architectural.
Yeah, you're right. I think we summed it up as people. I think it's part of the night. Oh gosh, here it is. Wait a minute.
Dark Knight,
Part of a franchise. Yeah, so it's part of a franchise. So you're going to get that audience, and then like
The director.
Yeah, yeah. Just really, actually, I think it's an amazing poster, but sophisticated, complex, sort of a white man's intrigue. Oh,
Yeah,
and the rating was PG-13.
Yeah.
Which we thought it must have been R. And so, that was an interesting thing because, of course, you're going to get a wider audience.
Yeah.
In PG-13.
But the little kids are going to think they're watching a grown-up movie, and the grown-ups won't think they're watching a kids movie.
That's a great observation too, that these Christopher Nolan style films, they do want to be thinkers, but at the same time, they tend to go for a grab of a pretty wide audience. Really, you had so many wonderful observations. The thing I loved that you did too is you looked at their clothing. Clothing is also a great example of how you can create signs and symbols quickly. That, as someone said, like the way the one female on the poster is dressed on Star Wars versus Inception, completely different. And it's both communicates a lot about who they are, but it also communicates a lot about whose attention we're trying to grab.
And we noticed that the white print, DiCaprio's name, the date that the film comes out, that it's IMAX, and that it's the same director as Dark Knight. So those white things kind of pop out. So you would see DiCaprio, Inception, IMAX as you're walking by.
Yeah.
Bingo. You sounds like you're writing a USP right there. Just a few words like, okay, if you had to tell me what Inception is and like the top of your mind, that's probably exactly what they were going for. Okay, and then our last poster.
I can maybe, I was gonna say I can start us out. So it's very, very minimalistic and very enigmatic. So the title of the movie is only very small and in the upper right corner. And part of this kind of cultural touchstone of Facebook. So you'll recognize on the right that that's the banner of Facebook. So that's like a very clear anchor point for the audience to let you know what this is about. And then the tagline is really prominent. You don't get to 500 million friends without making a few enemies. That definitely begs the question, well, how? Tell me that story. And then it's just the guy's face. So ultimately we know that this is going to be about Mark Zuckerberg in this case. And the typography of that tagline is very clean and crisp, which to me evokes like a computer. So something that's typewritten, for example. And then I think one thing that I really liked is, at least to me, I interpreted this kind of darkness with the front lit to be reminiscent of kind of sitting in front of a computer in the dark. So the movie does a lot of showing Mark Zuckerberg by himself with a computer. So I think that like isolation is recapitulated here as well. Does anyone have anything else?
I was going to say, we talked about the fact that one side of his face is lighter than the other might be kind of an indicator of what's going to happen with the movie and the whole, how he treats people online versus how he treats people in person. And because Peter, who saw the movie, actually talked about how this part of it is the lawsuits that he's dealing with, And the other thing I noticed, there is no rating on it, or I couldn't see it. It's so small. There's, you don't know what the rating of the film is.
Yeah, I think this is a teaser, so they might not have had the rating officially decided yet.
Yeah, I think they didn't end up with a more traditional poster in the end. I did some Googling, and I think this is really the bulk of what they did, but it does read as a teaser.
Yeah, we originally thought it was a teaser, and then Peter said, no, this is the one they put out. And so we thought it was interesting that it really was just, you have the name of the movie very small, you have the website, so the social media push.
And it's sorry.
No, go ahead.
I was just gonna say, it's kind of assuming too that you might know Jesse Eisenberg's work, because he's not mentioned by name, but he's very prominent. And we said to us, there's kind of a context of the type of roles that he takes as well. So there's maybe some communication there of what to expect just by having his face.
Right. And we also thought the target audience would be millennials because they're going to be the ones who are most likely to recognize his face and know his past roles.
Really
No.
good. And yeah, this
Is
is an
it-
interesting twist on the character poster, right?
Right.
That or well, you could look at it as the actor, but you could also look at it as the real life person, because I think they, in my opinion, they're also banking on most people know if you see this particular shade of blue with this particular white font
Right.
and this stylized guy, you know who it actually is meant to be. They don't have to write, you're looking at a picture of Mark Zuckerberg, right?
Right. I mean, that was one of the first things that Peter pointed out, is that the way they did the name of the movie was just Facebook style. You know, and that's how you know what they're doing.
Yeah,
Because-
so nothing on here says Facebook, nothing says Mark Zuckerberg, but I think everyone on here knew exactly what this
Right.
was about, even if you haven't seen the film. Really
Yeah,
good.
and
Were there other comments? I'm sorry if I talked over someone.
Well, we just assumed it was drama just because of the look on Jesse's, I don't remember Jesse's face, and the coloring. Like there's nothing on this that says comedy.
There's a reflection in his eyeballs that is too small to see here, but I'd be curious to see if you could see an image that he's looking at in that reflection.
That's a good point. I'd never thought to check, but I agree. It's certainly reminiscent of the computer screen, if nothing else. And
Well, I'm looking at a bigger image, and yeah, it just is light. I don't think it's anything.
Yeah, we questioned maybe if it was meant to be like a profile picture, but you know, instead of smiling, he has this sort of expression which emphasizes the genre.
it's a bit
Right.
mugshotty, to be honest.
Yeah.
Exactly.
Is that what you wanted to say, Wendy?
I just have a question about fonts, because, or size of fonts, because the largest fonts are get to, friends, a few, or a few, get to and a few. And I just find this so interesting as opposed to what happened, like you, friends, enemies. It's very cool how it all works. I just would not necessarily have made those choices, but I don't know why one way or the other.
Yeah, the you is interesting too, because it kind of puts us in the position as well. Like it's trying to make it relatable to the reader or the viewer.
And putting friends right in the middle, almost like exactly in the center, but like on top of a picture of just someone by themselves, potentially like in the dark looking at a computer screen, sort of emphasizes that fact.
Yeah.
No, I've
It may even
always-
tie into the whole social media isolates us from the rest of the world kind of thing. If you
I
think
do
about it.
Yeah, I mean, I'd say practically speaking, you know, you have a hierarchy when it comes to typography. There's obviously, we talked a bit about style and color, that cursive says something very different than Comic Sans. But size plays a big role too. And I think the notable thing here is that friends and enemies are the same size, right? They want those to pop out more. 500 million and without making just aren't the most important parts. But I also sort of felt, this is my own reading, that they're kind of going for bars, right? So you can't really write up and down, but to lean into the mugshottiness, the criminal nature of this whole thing, that it feels a bit like he's behind bars. So they also tried to stretch everything to be equal in width, let's say.
I mean, Peter said part of the movie was about the lawsuits he's dealing with. So maybe that's an homage to that. I mean, I haven't seen the movie. I'm going to have to watch it now. I'll have to look and see where I can find it on streaming.
Yes, so that is the driving force. The whole movie revolves around this huge lawsuit that he's in.
Yeah.
So, well, I just recognize we're 15 minutes over time, so I don't want to hold anyone up who needs to go. But really, thank you so much to everyone for sharing your thoughts. And if I'm happy to stay on for a few minutes longer for questions, if anyone wants, or more comments they want to share. But if anyone needs to go, I wanted to let you know this is the kind of official end, let's say.
You had mentioned talking about trailers. I would be interested in hearing that.
I've got a few minutes.
A few minutes on trailers. So yeah, well, trailers are interesting. There's a bit of like, I think I shared as one of the readings, which I totally recommend. It's just more like a news article about, like a web article about the history of trailers. And it kind of goes through the different stages. And you really sort of see where a lot of the trailer building today came from our earlier history, because up until, I'm doing this off the top of my head, so please don't quote me on dates, but let's say in like the early era of film, there was a monopoly on.
Right.
Like,
I just read that article, so I'm trying to think of the dates.
Yeah, so
and it was like the 40s or 50s is when they started to become obsolete, that NHS or whatever it was called.
Yeah, and they,
Yeah, 40, 50s,
it was like about
60s,
the
yeah.
mid 40s, and it was right around like the Paramount decision, which was basically when they said, among many things, like, all right, there's a few big studios who have way too much power. And this was a case where there was also one company who was a monopoly on designing trailers. And they had sort of picked one formula that they were doing for all their trailers. The Wizard of Oz is a good example. If you kind of want to see what the old formula was, it's much more like, here's a few clips and like big pops of like quotes from critics and things like that. And they move quite slowly and such. They feel more like a montage than anything else. And then in the 60s was when they sort of started to experiment more with form. So, you know, let's say Alfred Hitchcock is a good example of this. Like if you've ever seen the trailer for Psycho, he actually tells you the whole plot of the film. It's like bright daylight. I mean, it's black and white, but he's just in front of the Bates Motel and is like, a murder's gonna happen here, folks. It's a haunted spot. Let's walk in, look at these stairs. Someone's gonna die right here. And it's a fascinating, like upside down, unconventional formula. But very quickly, you know, conventions came in again, and we started to see more of this safe approach, which was very much, let's just tell you kind of everything that you can expect to see. This really came with like the blockbuster. Like Jaws is a good example of, you know, they're building a bit of this mini movie style where they kind of want to tell you a lot about the film that you can expect. Not everything, but basically everything up to the climax, to sort of see if you liked this, then you should like the film. But there's still experimentation. Alien's a good example of like a trailer that really leaned into like the MTV music video age. Like they have no dialogue. It's a silent trailer. It's just a lot of like sound and screaming and blah, 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 and really ratcheting up tension, and then silence. And then there's the tagline everyone knows, like in space, no one can hear you scream.
Susannah, could you disable your screen sharing just so that we can see
more
people? Thank
Sorry.
you.
No problem.
No, that's okay. You were in your moment, so that was great.
And yeah, and then so that's kind of where we've ended up today. Especially like 90s onward, there's like kind of to a beat, really became like this formula of, again, they'll piece together different parts of the trailer or of the film within the trailer. And there's also a great article I sent that's like kind of shows you where trailer makers will pull from, because they kind of try to build a climax into the trailer itself. But more and more, a lot of film marketers rely on the easy, safe, little lazy approach, which is tell you pretty much everything in the film.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I mean, I did read all of these articles, although I admit I did it today.
Yeah.
Before I was procrastinated until this morning to do all of this.
I mean, I can't, you know, I'm happy anyone did any reading. I just put that out for fun. And yeah, I really do. What else? But we were actually just talking about this, that there was Inception is a great example of a trailer that really shaped kind of the modern day, particularly action film trailer. It sort of co-opted this like sound. Do you kind of know what I mean? Like there's really like a formula now with music and editing cuts, which is really interesting, or sound cuts, like these big beats that kind of drive like bump and then cut, bump and then cut, and it helps to ratchet up the tension. If you watch Inception, really kind of coined this editing style, sound style. So that's really interesting that a lot of trailers try to follow that formula now, to the point that actually Dark Knight Rises used the exact same soundtrack and sounds because they were lazy and needed to turn it around quickly. But also you can see cuts of videos where they use it a lot. Anyway, so it's interesting that there are syllable patterns when it comes to sound. And another guest on this call, can I mention, I guess, I don't know, mentioned there's a trend too with what trailers when it comes to covering songs. Maybe you know this one, that you do like an ironic cover of a song, like, oh, here's a really bad one. The film Geostorm, it's a natural disaster film, but in the background, it's like a slow, sad minor key version of What a Wonderful World. And so that's interesting with film trailers too, that the music they pick, that's a layer we didn't talk about today with posters, but music also very quickly expresses meaning, or sounds express meaning. So that's an interesting trend that kind of tried to catch people's attention by using an unexpected song to tell something.
I don't know if other people experience this. I see a trailer and I go, I absolutely probably don't want to see that movie. And then I'll listen to one of the actors talk to talk in an interview about the film, the background, their role in it, their work on it. I go, oh my gosh, I think I'd really like that film. And I go, how can the interview with the actor or the producer or the screenwriter versus the trailer be so completely different? And it seems so consistent that I don't even pay attention to trailers anymore, because they seem to be diametrically opposed to what the reality of the film is. Like, the trailers are trying to draw in maybe a wide audience, and I think I'm pretty narrow on what I watch. And I feel like, hey, can I be your trailer person? But then I guess I would lose a lot of audience for them. Has anybody else experienced that? No.
Oh, no, yeah, I can see what you're saying, and I get that. And, from the marketer in me, I say that they maybe aren't doing the best job in targeting, or maybe they haven't thought about a broad enough target market when they're thinking about it, and they're thinking a bit too narrowly. Because when we talk about with the Facebook one, I just assume the target market for them is millennials, but maybe it's not. I mean, a lot of people are on Facebook, so maybe it's a broader audience, but maybe that poster is too narrow in its target.
There's a guy who died about 10 years ago who had this wonderful mellifluous voice and was doing the trailers for everyone. And so all the trailers sounded alike. I don't know the guy's name, but he did a terrific job of in a theater near you.
In a world guy. Oh yeah, that was a whole trend, that in a world, and like he voices the Jaws one as well. That was really that's actually a good point too. The narrator, that was actually a somewhat, I don't want to say recent trend, but like kind of the blockbuster onward, so like 1975 onward, that was really introduced as a mechanism to tell what a film is about. But that's gone away quite a bit in like the recent sort of trailer design. Again, they're relying more on music and dialogue to tell you the film.
Yeah, well, the guy died, so they had to do something else.
There's a great film, I think it's called In a World, starring I can't remember her name, but it's about voice actors who do the sort of narrating for films, but it's about a woman who wants to be like the next version of that.
It's a Lake Bell.
Like, thank you, Taylor.
You're welcome.
I have a question for some of you. I noticed there are some 14, 15, 16 graduates here, and my kids are at the same time, about the same time about the same age as you. They have a deep distrust of formula. Absolutely, with music, with those trailers with that deep voice, they would not go to see a movie. They want something that's fresh. And this is what pinged the question, and I'm going to let it go to you. I'm a composer. I learned that strong syllables should be on strong beats. Weak syllables should be on weak beats. Totally accept this all across the board. But in recent years, that's happening less and less, especially like in twee pop, but in all over. And when I talk to my kids about this, they say, that's actually a hierarchy, Mom. And that's old. So when I saw the Facebook where the words almost seemed random, I thought, oh, there it is, the distrust of hierarchy, some words being more important than others. And they don't want to say, oh, they're trying to tell me this. They don't want that. So I just want to know where you think it's going, and whether that's happening in the younger generations where they grew up with that format and that formula, and they're like, take it away, I'm being manipulated. That's what I get from them. So what's your thinking about where we're going?
For me, what you just said at the end there is what I relate to the most. It makes me feel like I'm being manipulated.
Yeah.
But yeah, I don't know that I have like a particularly cohesive understanding of that dynamic either, but I think you're right, at least in my experience, that it's common in our general demographic. But for me, that's the biggest thing. Like, I view film as an art form. So when I see it, I want to feel like I'm getting a message that the director gave or that the actors are giving. And when it becomes formulaic, then it just like reminds me of kind of the more business side and the practical side. So for me, it's largely the manipulation point.
Yeah, and for me, like if I see a trailer that relies too much on formula and it gives me the entire plot, it takes me to like introduction, the conflict, here's the resolution, the happy ending. I just think they didn't put enough thought into the trailer, which makes me wonder if they put enough thought into the movie itself and if it becomes worth the time.
Absolutely. And like when I go to the theaters, oh God, I do miss it. And I see, all these blockbuster trailers or these, these rom-com kind of things, they all feel the same. And I really resent that.
Yes.
It makes me think that filmmakers think that we're stupid. We want to see the same movie over and over again, which frankly, a lot of people do. And that's fine. That's just not me. I want to see something that professes to have a soul to itself. But if it's just another Transformers knockoff or something, then that inspires nothing pertaining to my wallet personally. And I just, it's like nails on a chalkboard. And related to that, which I was going to bring up earlier, kids movies are a really interesting whole genre of trailers. And in particular, those really like to break the fourth wall. I mean, they're so like chaotic all the time. It's just throwing colors, sound, images, all this stuff at you all the time. It's an experience for a lot of kids films, but they like to say like, coming soon. And then they'll show a clip of this little CGI character saying, I can't wait. And that's in the movie. And it's telling you how to feel. It's breaking the wall and pulling you in. And I just, oh God, it's disgusting. I absolutely hate it. But
well, the volume. I mean, I thought I was going to pass out. I don't get into theaters very often, but just bombarded with a half an hour of horrible trailers at a volume that was really physiologically distressful.
And I don't even show up to movies on time anymore, so I can try to avoid those trailers.
Oh yeah.
It is nice to be able to be in our own homes and you can just mute the trailers.
Right. Yeah.
I thought that was such an interesting point. And I agree. I mean, in theory, like a point we didn't talk much about as well, but is kind of goes along with that is hopefully, cinemas package relevant trailers together. So like when you might notice this, if you go see a horror film, you're probably going to see ads for other horror films. But sometimes if there's like a very weird, unexpected match, that can also leave you as the person sitting there like, why are you marketing this film to me? It's the same reason, again, you wouldn't market a horror film at a kid's film. Like they don't need to see Jason.
But I've been at films where I've seen the trailers and I'm like, I'm never going to watch that movie.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Almost all of them. If you're lucky.
Yeah, you're probably not the target group, and that's okay. That's I guess the note let's end on, which is that when it comes to marketing, the goal should never be to try to please everyone, because then you'll please no one.
You can't please everyone.
Exactly. So that's why hopefully with every film marketing plan, you kind of have a sense of the group you most want there, and that you really connect with them. Well, it's 9:00 my time. So I think that seems like a great wrap up point here. I really appreciate everyone joining us today. Sharon, did you want to say any last couple words?
Mostly, I just want to say thank you to everybody for being such great participants, having good insight and questions for Susannah. And of course, thank you so much, Susannah. This was really, really interesting. I kept looking off to the side of my screen because I had my older son here who is a film studies major at a large university that I will not name because it's not Wooster. But we were having a blast, just talking to each other and just observing and commenting on your comments and all that. So this was fantastic. And thank you all for being a part of today. And if you have any questions, if you want to contact, reach out to Susannah or something, let us know through the alumni office, we can connect you.
Yeah. And you can, anyone feel free to connect with me on LinkedIn too. I'd love to.
Yeah, sounds great.
Link with all of you.
Yes. Well, thank you very much for everybody being here today and your time and attention and insight. We really, really appreciate it.